What if you could create your first cinematic AI movie in less than an hour, even with zero experience? For the past 3 years, I've refined a simple workflow that does exactly that. And the best part is that you don't need complex prompts, expensive tools, or any editing background to follow it. So in this video, I'm going to give you the complete step-by-step system to go from a simple idea to a finished AI film today. Now, most people run into the same problem when they try to create an AI video for the first time. They have the idea in their head, but they don't really know how to turn it into a full cinematic movie. However, that can be immediately solved by creating a proper plan. Now, I know this might sound obvious, but without this foundation, everything else will lose quality and eventually fall apart. Just look at the people who jump straight into the generation process and spend hours regenerating clips and burning through their credits, only to end up with a mediocre video. That's because they didn't take the time to create a plan properly. So let me show you the exact process I follow to do this the right way. The first thing I do is open Claude, because this is where the full brainstorming part happens. And once I'm inside, I tell it the exact idea I have in mind for the video. In this case, it's a fight between two characters, where one of them eventually becomes a robot. Now from here, I ask Claude to help me build the full plan around the 3 essential blocks: the environment, the characters, and the scenes. The environment is what controls most of the details inside the video. It decides the outfits, the lighting, and the overall feeling of the final result. For the characters, I told Claude I want a fight between 2 people. One is Yuri, which is actually going to be me, and the other one is Ray. I also give it a quick description of both characters, so it can fill in the details the AI generator will need later. And then we have the scenes, which are basically the storyboard of the video. You can ask for as many scenes as you want, but for this example, I'm going with 4. And just like that, Claude gives us the full plan with all 3 blocks. Now from here, you can change anything you want. You can go back and forth with Claude, edit the story, adjust the characters, or anything else until everything feels right. And that's exactly what I usually do. I spend a couple of minutes refining the small details, and once I'm happy with the direction, I just follow each step to create the video. But even people who get this part right tend to make one big mistake. They go straight into the video generator and try to follow the plan, but they end up burning through credits and generating clips that don't connect to each other. And the reason this happens is because they skipped one important step. That's called the asset first principle. Now, if you've never heard of this before, the rule is very simple. You never want to go straight into video generation and test random things out. Instead, you want to treat your video like a cake. And if you want to bake a great cake, you need the right ingredients first. In this case, those ingredients are your characters and your locations. But you can't build everything all at once and expect the best result. You need to create each asset separately first, and only after that, you bring them together inside the video. So that's exactly what we're going to do next. So just like with the cake example, we need to start with the first ingredient. And here, that ingredient is the character. Because if you don't have a standalone character that you can reference across your generations, the AI has no real idea what that person is supposed to look like. So you'd either have to rewrite the same description inside every prompt, which is a complete waste of time, or you let the AI guess what you mean, which almost always leads to a different looking character from one scene to another. And that's exactly why, if you want consistency throughout the entire video, you need to build the character first as a standalone asset. Now for this, I'm going to use OpenArt because it has all the features I need inside the same platform. I get access to all the image and video models, plus some of the best AI features I've seen. So if you want to follow along with me, I'll leave a link in the description below. Once we're inside, we'll head over to the character section and click Create Character. You'll see 3 different ways to build a character. You can start from an image, describe it with text, or build it from preset categories. Now, because I want to create a character that looks exactly like me, I'm going to use the Start from an Image option and upload a photo of myself as a reference. What the AI will do is analyze the image I just uploaded and extract all the important details from it. The way I look, my skin tone, and even the small details people normally don't pay attention to. Basically, everything that makes me look like me. And then it uses that information to build a character. So I'll click Start from an Image and upload the photo. Now this field accepts up to 4 images, and the more you upload, the stronger the character identity becomes across different angles. But for this example, 1 good image is enough. Once the image is uploaded, I'll give the character a name. I'm going to call mine Yuri. Below the name, there's also a background story story field. You can add any description you want here, but for now, I'm just going to leave it blank. And after that, all I need to do is click Create. In just a few seconds, the character is built and saved into my library. And from this point on, I can use it inside any image or video prompt I create later just by typing at Yuri. Every time I do that, the model locks his identity into the generation. So the face, the outfit, and the overall look stay consistent. And the best part is that you only need to do this once. So for any future video, I can skip this entire step and go straight to using him inside the prompt. So with the first character locked in, we now have the first ingredient ready. But for this video, one character isn't enough. We also need Ray, and this time, I'm going to use a different method. Because unlike Yuri, I don't have any reference photos of Ray. He's a completely new character that I'm building from scratch for this video. So we'll head back to the character section and click Create Character again. But instead of using Start from an image, I'm going to use Build Your Character. This is the method that lets you create a character from preset categories. So instead of needing a reference photo, you give the AI a list of choices and it builds the character based on what you pick. The first category is the look vibe. Here, you can choose from options like casual, street, fashion, or even 1920s. And for Ray, I'm going with 2000s. Next, we have the gender. You can choose between male, female, or androgynous. So I'll pick male and move on to ethnicity, which will be Caucasian for my character. But you can also choose from African, East Asian, or a few others. And if none of them fit what you want, you can also add a custom one or skip this step entirely. Then we have the age range, which I'll set to young adult. Now, after the presets, there's the additional description field. And this is actually one of the most important parts because the presets only give you a generic version of the character. So you'll get someone who fits the general direction but could still look like anyone. The additional description is where you turn that template into a specific person. So for Ray, I'll add something like this. Next, I'm going to press generate and wait a few seconds. Once it's done, OpenArt gives me 4 different variations to choose from. And as you can see, all of them look extremely good and include the details I asked for. But I like this one the most, so I'll save it. And just like that, Ray is now saved into my library next to Yuri. So now that both characters are locked in, you might think we're finally ready to jump into video generation. But there's still one big problem, because the AI doesn't just need to know what your characters look like, it also needs to know where they are. Otherwise, the location from the first scene might look completely different from the one in scene 2. And by the time you get to scene 4, it'll feel like you're watching 4 separate videos stitched together. And that's exactly why, before generating any video, we need to build the location as the third asset. For this, I'm going to use the new GPT image 2, because this is actually the best image model right now for creating realistic shots. So let's head over to the image section and select that model. Now, when it comes to the prompt, I always follow a simple structure. Instead of writing a vague description and hoping the AI understands what I mean, I use a structure that lets me be as specific as possible. So first, I start with the foundation. This is where I define the shot type, the setting, and the lighting. For this example, it'll be a wide cinematic shot of a sun-baked salt flat under harsh noon light. That alone already gives the AI a strong base to work from. Then I add the smaller details that make the whole place feel more cinematic. And if you're not really sure what details to include, you can always go back to Claude, because it already knows the full story you're trying to build. So in my case, I'll add things like dust drifting low across the ground for atmosphere, plus a few style cues at the end. Once the prompt is ready, I'll click generate, and here's what we get back. Honestly, it looks great. The salt flat looks exactly how I imagined it, with the fuel drums right there in the foreground, and the harsh noon sun gives the whole shot that cinematic feeling I was going for. So I'll go ahead and download this one. And now that the location is ready, we can finally start putting everything together inside one video. And for this, we're going to create 4 different scenes. But before we actually start building them, I want you to take a quick look at the first scene we're going to recreate in a second. Honestly, this scene already looks really good, and if you take a closer look, you can see it has all the elements we built so far. Yuri looks exactly like the character we saved, the salt flat is the same location we generated, and the whole thing has that cinematic feeling we're going for. On top of that, the scene itself is really clear. But what actually makes this scene look this good isn't just the assets we created earlier, it's the prompt behind it. So let me show you exactly how I built it. For this, I'm going to reveal one of the most powerful techniques I use, called the multi-shot framework. Here's exactly how it works. Instead of writing one huge prompt that tries to describe an entire 15-second scene, you break it into multiple shots. For example, shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, and so on. And each one has its own camera angle, its own action, and its own references. This way, you get full control over the final result, and that's why all the professional creators I know use it. For this method, I always use Seedance 2, and that's because this is the best video generator out there. It can handle audio directly inside the video, keeps our references consistent, and it also follows the multi-shot structure really well. So let's go to the video section inside OpenArt and select Seedance 2 as the model. Now here's the actual prompt I use for scene 1. As you can see, I start with a wide shot of the salt flat. This gives the scene some space and shows where everything is happening. Yuri is crouched behind one of the fuel drums, while the noon light hits the dust on the ground. And as you can see, I'm describing only one clear moment, the wide shot. I'm not trying to add 3 different actions into the same beat because that's when the model starts getting confused. Each shot inside this framework should focus on one camera angle and one simple action. Otherwise, you're just overloading the model again. Then, for shot 2, I cut closer to Yuri's face. His eyes are fixed on something off screen and his jaw is tense. This makes the scene feel more personal, because now we're not just seeing where he is, we're seeing what he feels. For shot 3, I go over the shoulder. Now we're looking past Yuri and out across the salt flat. In the distance, a figure slowly walks closer while heat rises from the ground. And notice the @ symbol inside this shot. That's how I reference the assets we created earlier. So instead of describing them from scratch every single time, I can simply call them in by their tags. This keeps the prompt clean and gives the model the exact references it needs. Now the next part of the prompt is the audio. Most creators think audio is something you add later inside the editor, but Seedance 2 can actually generate the audio directly with the video as long as you tell it what kind of sound you want. So at the bottom of every prompt, I add a small audio section. For this scene, I add the wind moving across the salt flat to create atmosphere. Then I add distant footsteps to suggest that someone is getting closer. And underneath everything, I add a low pulse of tension to set the mood. Now, you don't have to overcomplicate this. You just need to note down a few simple sound layers for your environment and the action. And once the audio is built into the clip, you don't need to add any other sound effects later in the editor. So let's go and see how this prompt will turn out in the generation. For the references, I'm adding the location image we generated in the last section. And for the saved character, I'm tagging Yuri so the model knows exactly who to use. Then I set the duration to 15 seconds, which is the longest a single scene can be, and the resolution to 1080p. I'll also keep the aspect ratio at 16:9, and after that, I paste in the multi-shot prompt and click generate. Seedance takes about a minute to put the whole clip together, but after that, here's what we get back. As you can see, the scene includes all 3 shots exactly as we wrote in the prompt. The overall scene feels extremely cinematic and the audio is on point. Now, for scene 2, almost everything we just learned still applies. We use the same multi-shot framework and the same settings. So because we got the workflow right for scene 1, we have already done the heavy lifting. However, there's one small thing that changes. And honestly, this small step is what decides if scene 2 feels connected to scene 1 or if it looks like a completely new clip that came out of nowhere. And that step is called the continuity chain. It connects every clip you generate to the clip before it. So instead of treating each scene like a fresh start, the model picks up from where the last scene ended. The lighting, character, and overall mood all carry into the next clip. And because of that, the cut between scene 1 and scene 2 becomes almost invisible. Inside Seedance, you do this with the video reference field. So once scene 1 is generated and you've picked the final version, you upload that clip into the video reference slot for scene 2. Just make sure you use the version you actually want to keep, not a rough draft or an early version. Now the model has scene 1 as context, so when it creates scene 2, it understands the world it needs to continue from. Seedance uses the video reference as context for the next scene, and this is what separates AI films that look like real movies from AI films that look like 4 random generations stitched together. You don't need to add a transition in the editor. The model bakes the continuity straight into the clip. Now let's also add Ray as our second character. Then for scene 2, I'll write a new multi-shot prompt that picks up where scene 1 ended. The wide shot starts with Yuri rising up from behind the drum and the figure now close enough to see clearly. Then I keep the rest of the settings the same as before and I click generate. And just like that, scene 2 flows seamlessly into scene 1. The sol flat is identical, and Yuri picks up exactly where we left him at the end of the first scene. The lighting and the mood carry straight through, and even the soft tension underneath the audio plate flows naturally from one clip to the next. But scene 3 is where the story really turns. This is the moment Ray transforms into a giant armored robot, and Yuri gets completely scared. But what's special about this scene isn't the transformation by itself. It's the emotion on Yuri's face when he sees it happen, which brings us to one of the most underrated capabilities of Seedance 2, and that's emotions. You see, pretty much all the AI video models I've tested so far were bad at this, but Seedance is actually really good at reading emotions like anger, fear, and surprise. And what I like about it is that you don't always need to write the emotion directly inside the prompt. If the scene already gives the right physical cues, the model understands what's happening and lands the emotional beat on its own. You can see this clearly in my actual prompt for scene 3. I don't tell Seedance to make Yuri look scared. I only describe what fear looks like on a real person. Tight on Yuri's face, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, jaw slack, staring straight up at the towering form. He breathes out, low and shaken, and mutters one word. And Seedance reads that as fear, because that's exactly what those cues mean to anyone who has ever seen a real human reaction. But if you want an extreme emotion like full panic, terror, or rage, then you do need to name it directly. Seedance handles normal emotional intensity really well from physical cues alone, but it won't push the performance into that extreme range unless you tell it to. Then, once that's set, I add scene 2 as the video reference. Keep all the settings the same and click generate. And there it is. The transformation lands cleanly, and Yuri's reaction reads as visible fear, even though I never wrote the word fear in the prompt. And from here, scene 4 uses the same methods we already covered: the multi-shot framework, the continuity chain, and the audio plate. So once I generate that one too, we have all 4 scenes ready. Now the only thing left is to put everything together. And honestly, this is the easiest part of the whole workflow, because we already did all the hard work. So for this, I'll open CapCut and drop all 4 clips in the right order. Then I'll watch the full sequence to make sure everything is alright. If I notice anything that I don't like, I can simply trim it, but the current video is perfect as it is. And because Seedance 2 already added all the sound effects inside the video, I don't even need to worry about adding audio myself. So I'll just export it in 1080p and play it. And I honestly have nothing bad to say here. The results literally speak for themselves. So if you want to start making your own AI films like this, go sign up to OpenArt with the link in the description and use the workflow you've learned today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.